All right, so in this tutorial, what we're going to do is work on this greeting. So to basically what it's going to do is just like a one-off here, but it'll create a greeting based on the time of day. It also types it out, which is fun, so it's kind of a twofer. If you click on this, you can see it. It says good morning, because right now it's before noon. But if I waited and did it after noon, it would say good afternoon. So depending on the type of day, it also types it out, which is kind of a neat effect. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do this function here. So first thing I got to do is go ahead and open up, come on, file, new file. We're going to open up a new file in Microsoft Visual Studio Code. And I'm just going to go ahead and save this, and I'm just going to call it greetingexample.html. Okay. Boop. All right. And I'm just going to go ahead and throw in the code, the basic code. So now we got the basic code. So let's first thing, let's just go ahead and write our HTML. It's actually going to be very easy. It's just going to be an H3. You can make it whatever you want, but I'm going to do an H3, so it's kind of big. And inside the H3, I'm just going to go ahead and do an ID, and we're just going to call it greeting. And that's it. It's going to be empty, because what we're going to do is we're going to target this element, and we're going to put in what we want. So I don't really, I mean, I could put something in there now, like welcome or something, but I don't need to put anything in there. And also I want to format that, so I'm just going to go ahead, and since it has an ID, I'm just going to call it, I'm just going to target the, oops, sorry, got to put style in there first. Not like that. Style, okay. Then I need to target it, and so it's greeting. Okay, and I'm just gonna go ahead and do font size, and we'll do 3EM, and we will do font family, and I don't know, let's do this bottom one. Oh, really? Okay, yay. All right, and whatever other formatting you want to do to make it look better, but this is fine for like the basic of what we need. Okay, so that's it for those two items. The most of it's going to be the CSS, which is going to be a little bit more than the other one. So we're going to head and start writing the script. All right, and let's do this. So we're going to need some variables to hold some things. We're going to do variable today. This is just going to store whatever the date is today. So it's going to be new date, like this. So basically what we're going to do is there's a built-in function that's just date. It's an object that's inside of, that's part of JavaScript. So when I do new, it means make a copy of it so that I have it, and I'm going to store it into today. So today is going to be this date object. That's the idea behind it. Okay. Now what we're going to do is I make another variable called hour now. So what the current hour is, and it's going to be today, which is that object. And now that it's that date object, I can get things from it. And what I'm going to get from it is get hours, and it's going to give me the current hour. Okay. And then the last thing I need to do is the variable that's going to hold my greeting text. Okay. Oops. Greeting txt. Okay. And it doesn't have anything in it yet because we got to put it in there. Now all we're going to do is we're just going to test this hour now. And we're going to see what hour it currently is. And we need to tab these. We need to see what hour it currently is. And then with that, you know, go off of that. So we're going to say if hour, oops, in parentheses, if hour now is greater than 18. Okay, so it goes by, it's military time, which means it's across 24 hours. So basically, if it's past 18 o'clock, which I guess would be past noon, so it'll be 12 plus 6, so it'll be after 6, I guess. So if the current hour is that, it's just going to, the greeting text, we're going to give it the value of, oops, good evening. All right, we're going to, boom. Good evening, like that. All right, that's basically it. And we're going to do the same thing for the other one. So first we're going to test if it's that. Now, if it's not that, we can't just do an else because we want multiple ones. So we're going to do else if. So basically, if that's not true, is this true? We're going to say, is hour now greater than 12? And we're just going to go ahead and do greetings text. Set that equal to, if that's true, just say good afternoon, because obviously 12 would be noon o'clock. Boom. All right, there we go. And then we'll get, now if that's not true, else if, okay, well, if that's not the case, is our now greater than 0. And then if that's the case, then the greeting text will assign it the value of good morning. I didn't put any exclamation points in here. It's not exciting if it's not exclamation points. And I did that wrong. We'll come back. Boom. There we go. Okay. So basically it's going to say if it's this, if it's this, and it's this, right? So those are our basic things. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do one else, right? You got to have like an escape here. And if it's none of those things, which it's got to be one of those because that's all there is. But for whatever reason, we're just going to say welcome. Okay? Do an exclamation point. Welcome to disappointment. All right. Good. So that will do, basically what it's going to do is it's going to make a custom greeting text based on the hour. That's what this part did. Now, the next thing we're going to do is the thing that's actually going to type it out for us. So if I want to just write it, I could just do like document dot write and then put in greeting text. So I'll just show you document dot write. Come on, write. And then we would do, oh, not like that. Greeting text. Boom. And will this run? I think it'll run. And then when I go to open it, where are you? Greeting. Come on. Open up. Oh. There we go. It'll say good morning. But it'll just say it. It won't do it. Like if I refresh it, it doesn't do any of the typing thing. But that will actually write it out for us. Where was I? So to actually do the typing out thing, that's going to be this next thing. All right. Boom. Okay. There we go. Okay. So we're going to do a variable I. We're going to set it initially equals 0 because that's going to be like our counter. We're going to do a variable txt. And we're just going to set that equal to greeting text. Now I could just keep using greeting text instead of just basically sticking this into a new variable. But the reason why I'm doing that is that if for some reason you don't want to use this part, but you want to use the type out feature, you would just put in whatever you want it to type, just put in here. So instead of this, you would put in, you know, quotes, semicolon, and that's what it will type, okay? So that's the reason why but I'm just going to stuff it in here so that it will type out my greeting. Then the variable speed, and that's just going to control the speed at which it types out, so you can play around with this number if you want and go with that. Okay, so now we're going to do the actual function that's going to do it. So we're going to do function, and we're going to call it type writer because that's kind of what it looks like. All right, and what we're going to say is if I was you. Okay, now if less than the text dot length. So if the total length of the text. So in this case, if it's greeting text, the length would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know, you count each character, even the spaces, all the way down. So if the length of it. Make sure I'm right there. Okay. If I is less than the length of the text, what I want you to do is do document.get element by ID. We want to grab our greeting. Oops. Oh no. Yeah. Greeting. Because we're gonna, if you remember, that was the name of this up here. So we're gonna grab that element and then inner HTML. Inner HTML, we're going to do plus equals txt dot char at I. Boom. And then we'll do I plus plus. And then we're going to do, I'll explain what it is in a second because it'll make more sense if I have it all out. Timeout type typewriter speed. Okay. So this is what it's going to do. So this function, oh, and then at the end, well, I'll show the end in a second. So this function here, it's basically going to run what's inside this bracket, right? So let's close this so it's a little bit smaller. Oops. Okay. It's going to run what's in here. And then what it's going to do is going to say if the number that we currently have, right, so that's our counter, if it's less than the total length of what this is, so basically if you're not on the last character, if I'm on any one of these characters but the last one, because the last one is going to be whatever, it's going to be the same number as what the total length is, then what I want you to do is in the document, find the element that has greeting attached to it, and enter HTML. What that means is that it's actually going to put it inside of here, inside the HTML, and it's going to say plus equals. So what it's going to say, if I just put equals, it will only put that one character in there. But if I do plus equals, it's going to take what was already there and add on to this. Because obviously what I want to do is write, like let's say it's saying good evening. I want to write G. Like I say, it goes around and it writes G. The next time it comes around, it's going to be on the O. Well, I want to keep the G. So this way it'll keep the G and it will add the next letter. Because this I, we're also going to use for the index of each item that we currently have. So when you do text.character at, so if I do text.character at, and if I type in, let's say 5, if I'm on this one, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because remember, it starts at 0. It would be the E is what it would give me. Okay, so that's the idea. So what it's going to, so it's going to go, okay, is it less than that? And it's going to run this. It's going to add 1 to it, so it'll start at 0. So the first thing it's going to do is just going to write this G for me. Then it's going to add 1 to I. Then the last thing it does is this, which is like a built-in function again. It says set timeout. And then what we do is we send it these 2 arguments. And what we say is run this function once this much time has passed. And then what it'll do is it'll call this function again and run down. And then we'll say, okay, after this much time, run this function again. So it'll keep running this over and over again, but it won't run it until this speed is completed. Okay. And that's basically how it works. All right. Now, if I run this, is it going to work? You probably already know that that's a rhetorical question, but the answer is no. It keeps popping up over here. The answer is no. And the reason why is nothing actually gets run. So this part will run. It will actually make all the text here, because what happens is that it's going to run through this. It's going to go body. It's going to write my H3 element, but it's empty, so there's nothing inside of it, so you're not going to see that. Then it's going to run the script. And when it runs the script, it's going to do this, and it's going to do this. And that's great, because it's just going to run right down the line. But there's nothing to tell it to go there. And you'd be like, well, that's what this function's for. You would be correct, because it's going to run this. Then it is going to run, and then this function's here. But it doesn't actually run the function. A function has to be told to run. You remember when we've done the other ones, we have a button, and we say on click, run this function. That's what we've been doing every time. There needs to be something to tell it to run. There's nothing telling it to run. Now we could set it that when they click, you know, I could make a button and say when click, but obviously I don't want to do that. I just want it to run as soon as it starts. So the easiest way to do that is actually just call the function right in the script. So right down here, I'm just going to write typewriter like that. And basically what that does is that will run typewriter. So I call the function. I don't give it any parameters because I'm not sending in information. You can see there's no arguments here, so nothing's coming from here into here. It's going to run it. So this will run it the first time. This will only run once, but then once it runs once, this function will call this function over and over again, and until it gets done, right? Because once it gets to if and it's the same as the length, this won't run again. It'll back out of this. It's not a loop, but it's almost like a loop because of this. It's almost like creating a loop. And then if we save it and we refresh it, boop, good morning. All right. And that is basically it. So, but you can kind of see, and you can, adjust these. You could change what these are. You could make the greeting change depending on, I don't know what browser they're using. I don't know what you would use to know that, but you could find different things out. I just did it by time of day. It seemed like an obvious thing that might be useful. This typewriter function, I could definitely see you could have other things that you might be able to do that could be really fun. So, Maybe have one that just never ends and just keeps writing A over and over and over and over again. So the length is never reached. But something like that would be fine. So hopefully you figure that out, and good luck.